Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the next session in our series on wildlife, this time on possum. As someone who has grown up in the state of Indiana and lived here most of his life, I, like I'm sure a lot of you have gotten kind of used to the presence of possum. We all dislike seeing this particular animal whenever they visit our properties. They kind of enshroud all those things we dislike in animals that we would consider rodents, even though possums aren't actually rodents. They have beady eyes, they don't look necessarily like the cutest animals in the world, and they can hiss and they can often scare us, and we find them in the worst places, in trash cans, under our homes, you name it. Well, today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the true nature of possums, the place they have in our ecosystem, and maybe even a little bit on how they can help us out. I want you to walk away from this recording today thinking, well, hopefully I just learned a little more about possum and maybe they aren't so bad. So let's dive in. So the possum that we're going to be covering for the most part in this recording is going to be Didelphus virginiana, the Virginian possum. So this is the most common species that you're going to find in the United States, possibly only the only species you will find in the United States. It originated in South America and has steadily migrated northwards through a variety of means, and that movement northwards is probably being pushed forward by a mixture of human activity and climate change. This is also the only known marsupial in North America. The only other place you're going to find a marsupial is going to be in Australia. This one just happens to be ours. It's not entirely clear how this species came to be or how it moved up here. Right now it's only theorizing. However, we are certain where it is. You can find it from Mexico all the way into Canada. And like a lot of you have probably noticed, they seem to be making your backyard the best place to live. Now, these unique animals have actually adapted a lot of ways to survive in their environments of choice. You look at them, you might see them crawling around the ground or in a tree, and you might think that there's nothing really remarkable other than these are particularly annoying animals. However, they actually have a lot of unique features to them. So for instance, Didelphus species have really good eyesight. They can't see much in the way of color, but they have several times the numbers of rods and cones in their eyes. So they are extremely good at seeing, which helps because these animals are primarily nocturnal. They also have opposable digits on their paws, so that way they can more easily climb things like trees or be able to manipulate food sources. And, as I'm sure a lot of you have had the unfortunate experience, they have some unique defense behaviors that are just theirs alone. As you know, we do have the saying, playing possum. So this is one of those unique defensive features that possum have. You can see these two little guys have been cornered here and someone's taking a picture, and they're just hissing and looking as scary as they can. Well, possum have 50 teeth in their mouths. That is a lot of teeth for an animal this size. But I do have some good news. This is nothing but a bluff. Possum cannot actually really hurt you. Only in the absolute most desperate situation will a possum actually attempt to bite you. The reason behind this is that possum, they are very quick. They have a top speed of about 7 miles per hour. We walk at about 7 miles per hour, so a possum is not really going to be able to get away from you that well. So what they do is they try to bluff predators by hissing and baring all those sharp-looking little teeth. But it takes a very great deal to actually get a possum to genuinely try to bite you. They would rather run away or hide, or what may really happen is you're going to see them go through the playing dead routine. One neat thing about this is that this is a behavior that possum have absolutely no control over. This is a nervous shock reaction. And here's an instance of this. Sometimes when possum play dead, they can actually do so for up to 6 hours. And there are a few things that are actually going on here. When a possum plays dead, it's more like it's having a panic attack. And their evolution has just made it so that that panic attack makes them fall over dead, makes them look like they have their eyes open, they're drooling, their tongues will loll out, and they have glands towards the back end of them that will actually begin to exude this really foul-smelling substance. For all intents and purposes, this possum looks like it is a dead, rotting animal that nothing wants to mess with. And it's an effective survival strategy. Take some time, especially if you have like a dog or something that happens to be in your yard. Watch as one happens near where a possum is. If you ever get the chance, you will see a possum just fall right over, and then after the dog is gone, it may get back up and decide to wander away. However, I would advise everyone, please don't let your dogs loose on possum. They really are harmless. They're not there to hurt you, and we don't want to have your dog get injured. So again, playing dead, this is not an intentional act on the part of the possum. It has no control over this. It just happens to be that funny quirk of evolution where it's developed this ability. The nervous shock causes them to fall over, and the tongue will all out. They'll drool, they'll blow snot bubbles, and of course there's that foul odor that they're going to exude from a pair of anal glands that they have. Now another unique feature of possum is one that I've already mentioned. These are marsupials. This is a really, really unique group of animals. These are animals that use a pouch to develop their young. They share this particular feature with species like kangaroo, koalas, Tasmanian devils, and of course other species of possum like brushtails and a few others. Marsupials are only located in two places, the United States with our Virginia possum and Australia, where you can find brushtail possum and all the other species that I just listed off. They also have a fairly quick reproductive cycle, which kind of causes problems when they live around human beings. Possum only live for around 3 years. If you find a possum that is at the 4-year mark, it is an extremely aged possum. They can mate after about 7 months of development, and their pregnancy is only 12 days long. When they give birth to little pinkies that are barely the size of a kidney bean, and when they're born, they will just crawl right up to their mother's pouch, so that way they can go ahead and begin to feed on her milk. They can have between 6 and 20 young at a time because there's a really high attrition rate with these animals when they're that young. A lot of them simply won't survive. So you'll only see a few possum really survive to the next generation. Now I went over a lot of this information already, but once possum get to about chipmunk size, and that's about 2 months of development, they're going to go ahead and leave mom's pouch. And they're going to start either following her around or they're going to ride around on her back for about 100 days. The reason they do this is similar to what we see with a lot of other mammals, or mammals I should say, is that they're learning from mom. They're learning where to get their food, how to behave in the wild, and how to watch out for danger. And I love this picture because I think it's really cute because you can just see the mom who's being extremely patient with all of her young hanging on her, which I imagine a lot of you might be able to relate to. However, this is a really good survival strategy. This means that mom doesn't have to keep that much track of her young. They're hanging right onto her, and they can watch everything that's going on. Now, the feeding habits. This is where we start to run into problems. Possum are what is called omnivorous. This means that they can eat all different kinds of foods, much like human beings. Human beings can eat nuts, grain, plants, meats, and possum are pretty much the exact same way, which means that they're going to be going after all the same kinds of food that we do. They also have the ability to consume not only fresh meat, but their bodies are able to tolerate meat that's been sitting out, so you'll find possum going after carrion quite a bit. Unfortunately, we often see possum as roadkill. Now, I'm going to put a caveat on this. We think we see them as roadkill. Sometimes if a car is coming and the possum sees the lights of a car, that could trigger their nervous shock reaction and they could go into a play dead state. However, since they are primarily active at night and they're willing to consume existing roadkill like a dead raccoon at the side of the road, they're going to be out there, which means unfortunately we're going to be hitting them with our vehicles. So one thing that I would advise, and of course this is just great advice, if you know your area, slow it down a little bit at night if it's around this time of year or into the summer, because with all the animals moving, you're going to spare yourself a fright and potential damage to your vehicle, and you're going to help a few other animals survive that just don't deserve to be hit by a car. Of course, we are going to find them in our trash cans because that's where the best source of food is. I can't even begin to tell you the number of times that I have found a possum in a trash can at night. So remember folks, if you have a trash can outside, put a lid on it. Make sure that lid is good and stable. because possum are good at getting in there, and that is where the problems really start to come in. If you've got a latch down lid, take advantage of it. A lot of their reasons in our trash cans and other places is one very simple reason. Possum, they don't want to be bothered. They just want a safe, empty place. So they're going to take advantage of those spots where animals, predators, and humans aren't going to be bothering them. So that not only means inside of a trash can, but that also means that they're going to take advantage of any abandoned burrows and dens of other animals. And unfortunately, there are a lot of human spaces that are going to resemble that. So let's see if we can go over a few spots. So this great picture right here shows a beautiful deck on a large house. Well, I have got some terrible news, because if that deck isn't sealed all the way down to the ground level, that means that there is a lot of space in there for a possum to find a nice little den where it can warm itself and keep young and be able to be safe while they sleep during the day. The same is going to go for your crawl space. Think about how many times you check your crawl space in a given year, because unless you're a professional in that area, I doubt you're looking a whole lot. And if you have an opening where a possum can get in, it's going to take advantage of that. Now, the good thing is that possum aren't what I'd refer to as a damaging animal. They're not going to chew their way through wood. They're not going to try to dig something out really, really hard. They would rather take advantage of the spaces that already exist. So if they're under there, you just may need to seal the area after you chase them out. You're not going to need to repair much of anything at all. Most likely, the possum took advantage of a spot that was already in need of repair. So the question comes up, and I get this a lot from my clients, Bob, I've got possum all the time. What can I do to try to resolve this problem? So this is where we get into a bit of a rough spot. So possum in Indiana and in a lot of other states are classified as fur-bearing, which means they can be trapped. You can legally trap them, and you can legally release them onto another property other than your own, so long as you have permission by the property owner. If you just go out in the middle of the country and release them, you are still breaking the law. You need to have permission to release them. The ability to shoot a possum is really variable. It depends on where you live, and it depends on the laws there. So I don't want to touch on this. I would rather have a personal conversation with you, or you could call your own extension educator if you don't happen to live within my area. The other thing you can consider doing is contacting a local wildlife nuisance operator. These are often associated with the Indiana DNR, or the DNR in your state if you're out of Indiana, or they're associated with law enforcement and conservation professionals. Contacting them is probably your best bet, because they are going to be the experts in that situation. They will know what to do and how to humanely trap that animal and safely release them. Live trapping a possum, however, is actually a fairly easy task. Possum don't tend to be shy about approaching traps. They're willing to go in so long as there's food there. And honestly, any food would work. I once jokingly, somebody told someone if they want to trap a possum, go to McDonald's and just put it in the trap and you're good to go. A lot of these live traps are readily available at a lot of different hardware stores like Rural King or Lowe's or any other place that has a gardening or home improvement aspect to it. And traps like the one that are pictured in the previous image are generally the most easy one to work with, and there are a lot of them available. Now, when you do this, though, I want you to take the time to be careful. Possum can carry disease. So the fleas on possum can transmit a type of typhus if they bite. Possum can also carry leptospirosis, tuberculosis, and a few other diseases that you may have heard of before. Now, possum are rabies resistant, so that one isn't nearly as much a concern. However, I do want to remind you that if you're going to be handling possum or their feces or urine, you should be wearing some kind of protective equipment, because you don't want to act as a transmission vector and you don't want it transmitted to you either. So things that you want to avoid when you're working with possum here. Animal attractants and repellents you could see advertised everywhere, and honestly, there's no real evidence that suggests that they make that good of an impact. Sonic devices are useless. They may work for a few hours, even as much of a day, but the thing is that animals adapt to stimuli, and if that stimuli isn't associated with a direct threat, they're not going to care. You could blare Metallica, and they aren't even going to blink at it, after a while at least. So I would avoid products like that. Do not attempt to use poisons or home brews when dealing with possums. In Indiana right now, I do not believe there are any poisons that are legally labeled for possums. So if you use one, you are breaking the law. Homebrew materials are insanely dangerous. Please don't use them. You could create something that could be a danger to you, or it could be a danger to animals that you want to protect, like companion animals, or things that are just non-target, like if you have squirrels or other animals passing by your property. Don't do it. If you're that desperate, call a wildlife nuisance operator or call your extension educator. We will help you figure that problem out. All right, a few things to consider when you're working with possum here, because there are a few things to consider with them. They're not all bad. I usually go with the concept of live and let live. Possum don't actually really represent a threat to you. If you get close to one, most likely they are already on their way out of the area or they are playing dead and you can just leave them alone, walk away. Possum will also help control tick populations because, like a lot of animals, the ticks go after the possum, but the possum have developed really good behaviors to help get rid of ticks on their bodies. So that means that they are helping reduce those tick populations down. They also serve the purpose as nature's janitor. They're going to help clean up the environment of different pests like our ticks, and they're going to help get rid of carrion. We don't want this stuff hanging around. I heard an ecologist once tell me that if we didn't have the work of animals like possums and other animals that eat dead things, the world will kind of rot within 2 weeks. So they are actually giving us a really vital service. We just tend to not like them when we see them. All right, with that, I've got my contact information if you ever want to get a hold of me and talk about some of your possum issues or really anything. And I have links to our Purdue Ed Store and our Purdue Plant and Pest Diagnostic Lab that you can take advantage of if you ever want more information or just have a problem that you don't know how to solve. Please feel free to contact us anytime. That is what we are here for. Keep an eye out for our next programs. I'll be sending them out soon, and as always, please like and subscribe. We're going to keep putting our programs on this channel. Thanks, guys, and I hope you are enjoying a wonderful spring.